everyone, and welcome to a new series of tutorials about soft skills in fencing. Now, I think we all know what good fencing looks like, and then we can reason that it has something to do with good application of fundamentals, good stances, beautiful movement or something like that. But what I find is that the fight books that we tend to work with are usually not that great at explaining to you how to get to that point. And this is of course not weird, because the fight books from German lands around 15th, 16th century tend to be ordered around Stücke or plays. So these are pieces, choreographed pieces of techniques that have a certain starting situation and a certain ending situation. And you ultimately learn by just doing loads of these different pieces and then piecing them together into a full system. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with learning defense like this. I kind of have done that, but it does take an awful lot of time. And I figured it might be helpful for you to do a video series focusing on certain concepts that I have learned in this way, and also by just doing lots of sparring, and showing you where I think we can see these things in the sources. Maybe not explicitly all that much, but at least implicitly. And I wanted to make this video series so that I can point you to those things and also talk to you how I think you can train these things. So soft skills like that, we're talking about things like structure and agility, but also some of the more mental things like courage and readiness. And I think if you do look, some sources do talk about them occasionally, but I think in all the sources they are present implicitly at the very least. So how are we going to do that? Well, first off, you know me mostly because I tend to do Messer according to Leckichner, and I think it's a great source, but this is one of those sources that doesn't talk about these soft skills all that much. It's got lots of Stücke, but very little about any other aspects of fencing. So I'm gonna try and make our vision of Leckichner a little bit clearer by looking at some other sources from the German tradition. Specifically, we're going to work a lot with the Augsburg group, so Codex Wallerstein, or the Baumann Fechtbuch as the kids know it these days. And of course also, as part of that same tradition, the Dürer fight book, because that thing is just very nice. It shows people practicing fencing, like it shows real people practicing fencing rather than the more stylized plates that we know from other sources. And of course, I'd also like to look at the Nuremberg Hausbuch, because that one has a whole list of properties that a good fencer should have, and some of them I think are very useful to us. This first block of tutorials I think is going to be about using grappling to make your fencing better. And I think I should explain why I want to do this for a little bit, because grappling is not for everyone to enjoy, and I can totally understand that, because grappling tends to be both physically and mentally quite a bit more intense than just fencing. So if you feel like grappling is not for you, then I can totally understand that. But I do feel that if you want to practice 15th, 16th century fencing, especially things according to Leckichner, a certain amount of base literacy in grappling can be very helpful. So there are certain fundamentals you can learn from grappling that I think are useful. And this is not strange, again, like a lot of these fight books, especially in the early Lichtenauer tradition, are assuming that someone who starts to learn fencing already has a bit of a background in wrestling. So a lot of the Stücke, a lot of the pieces really work well if you already apply lessons that you've learned from wrestling. And I think that these lessons are the ones that we're after. So what I'm going to do is, over the next couple of weeks or months, we'll see how many videos I'm going to make in this series. I would like to explore some things I think you can take from grappling that are especially beneficial if you want to fence with Messer. And then we're gonna work with them, and I'm gonna do that according to some of the soft skills that the Baumann Fechtbuch, so Codex Wallerstein, talks about. So we're gonna work with basically four things. We've got Sterck, we've got Wendigkeit, we've got Mass, and we've got Leng. And what that means is Sterck is strength, but think rather structure than strength. So being well structured, having a good stance. Then we've got, of course, the Wendigkeit, so the agility, something that you very much need to make sure you always respond in an agile way to whatever is happening. Of course, we have mass, which would literally translate to measure, but I prefer something like body control or precision to be at exactly the right spot where you need to be to leverage these previous two things. And then finally there is leng, which is not really a concept they talk about in wrestling, but I do talk about it in the longsword section. And these four things combined, if you apply these to all of the Stücke that you do, whether they are from this Bauernfechtbuch or from Lehrküchner, will really help you perform these Stücke effectively. And once you start piecing the whole system together, it will also, keeping those four things in mind, will really help you fence effectively, I feel. So that's the intro to this whole series. So let's start looking at one lesson in particular, and this one is very much focused on just Sterck, or structure. And we're gonna do one grappling play, the first one from the Bauernfechtbuch, and then I'm going to show you how it really applies to doing a Zornhauort well. And of course, you by now hopefully already have seen the Zornhauort a couple times. You know what you can do from it. This tutorial is very simple because everything you want to do from a Zornhauort happens because you do that Zornhau and that Ort correctly. And that's what we're focusing on, and we're going to use grappling to help us with that. So let's go have a look at the first exercise. Before we actually start doing this technique and then also executing this throw if you are so inclined, I think we should first have a look at what the Bauernfechtbuch means by Sterck, or structure. So what they say about Sterck in wrestling is that you should go low into the Waage, or the scales, which is a very balanced position, and that you shall set yourself very strongly down on the ground. So that means that you should have a stance that makes you very hard to pull or push off balance, I think. And one of the ways to do that, and this is a cheeky little nod to Fabian van Ouwerswald's wrestling book, is use a hip hinge. So what you're basically going to do, instead of like being fully upright, which makes it very easy for someone to just pull or push you over, that gives you that full engagement of the posterior chain, and it allows you a lot more flexibility to deal with what an opponent tries to do with you once you're grappling. Now, of course, you also should bend your knees a little bit, go a little bit low. You don't have to go like fully to the ground just yet in the basic position, but what you don't want to be is like fully upright. So try and get a little bit of a hip hinge, basically meaning you first take a good position, so you bring your sternum up to the sky, make yourself look tall, and then you bend over a little bit, keeping your back straight. That's kind of like your hip hinge, your basic grappling position. Now, another thing that you can do is make sure that you do not allow your opponent in that much. So what people tend to do is they have their elbows go out, and that kind of allows your opponent to grab through the middle and start grabbing you by your neck or your clothing close to your neck. All of that is bad. So what you want to be able to do is have your arms not like overextended, but locked with the elbows kind of down, so that if they try and go for the middle, you can just keep them literally at arm's length. And that's the first thing. So for your first exercise, you just go into this position of long arms. So your left is on the inside of your partner's elbow, your right is kind of on the outside, and you take this position with the hip hinge, with the arms kind of extended, and then you can start gently pulling and pushing. So start tugging on your partner, try to push them over a little bit, move around a little bit. Doesn't have to be particularly intense, but there needs to be a little bit of a test of this structure. And once you're comfortable with this, you can move on to the next thing. Now, usually a lot of these throws do not happen in a vacuum. You try to set something up very similar to fencing, where in Zufechten try to get an advantage for yourself. With grappling, you need to like push and pull. One of the things we don't do in HEMA wrestling training an awful lot, but start looking at like more established grappling arts, like judo for instance, there's a lot of tugging happening before anyone commits to a throw. Well, kind of the same thing should be happening here. So what you want to do for this particular technique, we're going to work with a tug. So what's going to happen is you want to set up your partner to raise their front foot off the ground, and paradoxically for that you need to tug them down. So from this position, in long arms, tug them down quite strongly. So bend over a little bit from your hip hinge, try and tug them down. What that does, people generally do not like it when you tug them, right? So what that does is they try and bring themselves up again. And in that motion, they're gonna release some of that pressure on their front leg. So their weight is gonna shift more to the back, and that is what you're waiting for. So while they're coming back up, you throw up their arms and you start grabbing their frontmost leg. In this case, with your partner, is gonna be their right leg that's gonna be in front. So throw up your arms, grab the right leg, and then lift it up. This is the first part of this wrestling technique. Now, the part that I feel is very relevant here is your good structure, right? So to start with, you need good structure so that someone does not do this to you. If you can create a situation where you get someone off balance, then you get to grab them and try and throw them. If you are so inclined to actually start practicing this with throws, you can get even more out of it. So get yourself a protective thing on the floor. So some mats, like we have over here, would be ideal. And otherwise, just a soft bit of floor with someone who knows how to break fall is a good way to do this. So what do you do? Once you've lifted up the leg, you do not just stand there, because at some point someone's going to be able to recover their balance. No, you kind of start stepping through. So, and you do not step around, nor to the side or back, no, you go directly forward. So you have basically tugged your partner down, they are coming up, you give them that little bit of help coming up, bringing the weight to their rear leg, allowing you to grab their front leg, and from that point you start moving forward. Do not give them any respite to regain their balance. So at that point you step forward, your structure goes through theirs. Yours is grounded on 2 feet, theirs isn't. And that's when they fall. And this is kind of like this first throw from the Baumann-Fechtbuch that really showcases how you can use structure. But there's an even nicer one that actually fits with the Zornhauer better, which is the follow-up to this throw. So one of the things you notice with this throw, when you start like grappling in a slightly more free context, like sparring and grappling, you find that this particular one does not work a lot, because people tend to either just pull their leg back or they go into the Waage or the scales, which is again like this very low grounded position. So if someone does that, if they like bring their weight down, this is not a problem. So you go through the same thing. So you tug them down, they come back up, you help them along, try and go for their leg, they realize they put all their weight down. Right now, they're in a very solid position, but you can apply pressure in the other direction. So what you can do now is step behind them with your right leg and have your left arm go in front of them, and don't snake your way around them, but through them. Again, your structure breaks theirs. Now, you're at that point in a position where you could very easily throw them. So your solid application of structure going through them has broken theirs. You want it a little bit more, then there's going to be a throw involved. So if you at that point would keep moving forward, so don't just step behind them with the right leg and in front of them with your right arm, but kind of keep moving forward, you are going to be breaking their structure even more, and you're going to be throwing them to the ground quite neatly. Again, if someone knows how to break fall, it's quite easy to fall safely with this, but it's a really fun experience to try if you're so inclined to do basically continue your forward momentum just that little bit further. And that is very relevant for the Zornhauer, as we're going to be seeing right now. So for the Zornhauer exercise, you're going to start off with a very simple choice thing. Rather, for you as a student, there's not really a choice. The coach will give several options, but you always do the same. You are throwing a solid cut from above at their head. Oberhaut, Zornhaut, whatever you want to call that thing. It is a solid cut that kind of goes to the ear or lower to the head. Now, your coach is going to be either doing a very small parry in front of their face, which you should be able to cut through, or they're going to be doing a proper parry with extended arm, lots of reach. If your coach decides to parry, you still do that solid cut. If your coach decides to not parry, it should connect properly with the mask at the ear level or lower. Now, this sort of thing, putting a solid hit in like that would connect well with a parry, but also solidly with the mask, is the base of everything that follows. But we can do one extra step here. So option 3 for the coach is they're going to be now sometimes stepping back with a parry in the middle that is kind of weak. And that means that you will either be cutting solidly into their head while the coach has this small weak parry. You will either be cutting into the parry solidly, having control there, or you're going to be cutting into a weak parry but there's no mass to connect with, in which case you can shoot the point forward. And interestingly enough, you could technically in all these other situations also shoot the point forward, because you don't really lose anything, and if your coach does step back, you will gain the center line and a solid thrust from it. And that's kind of like how this sort of how it goes in essence. And what you will find is that what you do with your body is very similar what you do with these two throws that we did previously in this lesson. So your overall stance before you attack should be well structured. If you land, you very much, if you land your first cut, what should be happening is very much your the kind of position that you end up in once you have tugged someone and let them come up. So you're very solidly there, you can grab their leg and then start moving forward from there. That's kind of like your position when you've made that first cut. So you should not be falling off to the side or feel unbalanced in any way. You have made the cut and you're solidly on your legs, the same way as if you were grappling with someone. And then if you do cut through their parry and they step back and you have your point online, you keep following them with that point in the same way as you were walking through them with the second throw, the continuation to that. And again, the same sort of structure that allows you to keep the point in the middle, keep them at the point of your messer. And I think this is how grappling can deliver you some very interesting soft skills that really help with fencing. In this case, it's the structure from several throws and the way you hold your body, the way you move forward into someone with it, and applying that to very simple sticks, so overhauer, zornhau, and then thrust with the point, with the ort. This is actually making it a lot easier. So try to fence the way you grapple, and some things will start falling into place. At least that's what I hope. For me, it definitely does. So let me know what you think of this. For the next one, we'll probably be focusing on parrying with precision, so with mass. And after that, we'll probably have a couple of other things. And we'll probably culminating after those with a couple of very interesting exercises in sparring that will allow you to bring these skills into sparring as well. For now though, this is where I want to leave it. So see you all for the next one. Cheers.